price of games. Rise up, stand the price, the loss of legs. My occupation, in essence, not complacent. Block the banquet, stop the computation. I'ma make the coda, fools just wanna make the quota. They can't rock around here, they need baking soda. This a hydra, no way they taking over. Lay them below the basement with snakes, cobras.
By the way, between Matteo and Shawn, they are killing so many animals using like this mink brush. So if PETA were ever to come down with their animal rights hammer and slam these bozos across the face with it.
If PETA comes down on me, you know what I'm going to do?
What is it?
I'm going to start a Twitter movement. PETA broke me.
PETA broke? Yeah. PETA break. To be fair, PETA breaks everybody.
This is the Inkpulp podcast. Hey.
Look at that. You know what's amazing? Last week when it was just the three of us, by the way, this is like Go USA the entire time, okay? The last week that we were recording, Matteo was at the other end, and he looked like, and you don't talk about the 90s, he looked like an awful, like pornographic JPEG that you're trying to download from the 90s. He was just so pixelated and was just like slowly moving. And yet here we are. You're on I suspect that you're on a Wi-Fi connection, Jason.
I actually, everybody's fine though, but Shawn looks like the porn thing you were just talking about.
That's okay.
Really?
That's all right. Shawn really, like, again, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because once it gets uploaded, everything will be high definition. And by the way, the guy that just, you know, before I just hit the live button, he was asking, oh, can we go 1080 or high definition on this? I'm like, calm down, Shawn. You know, like, what is it really that you wanted people to see? All right. Okay. So we're going to do the whole beginning part. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. This is the Inkpulp podcast. I am your humble and hyper-carry co-host, Eric Canetti. You don't see Matteo Scalera here because he's a bum and his internet connection in Italy sucks. We just got through talking about it. And joining us here is our amazing host, the creator and brain of this whole thing, Shawn Crystal. Hello. How are you, man?
I'm
All right,
doing
enough
well.
of you. Really the important guy in the show. We've been trying to tag this guy like a frickin' like a wild dolphin out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We've been trying to find this man for about 3 or 4 weeks now. His schedule is very unaccommodating, depending on how you look at it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Shawn Alexander, how are you, friend?
I'm good.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming
look
on,
how
Jay.
serious your setup is in the background. There's a couch. There's one of your amazing paintings. By the way, that's an original, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how I judge. That's how I judge people whenever they come on the show. Like their setup, right? There's a couple of times Wes Craig had an awesome sort of situation when we were interviewing him it was his bedroom and it looked like a studio. Yours is a studio and it looks like 3x, 4x a studio. Shawn's looked like that's a backdrop that looks fake. That's definitely not a real space. Mine too. I'm using
it's
Google
my virtual
Blur.
studio.
No, I'm using Google Blur. This is the what is this? The 153rd episode.
Oh wow.
I'm going backwards now.
Yeah. No, you're still jumping ahead.
What am I? What is it now? It's got to be 147, 148. It doesn't really matter. We'll figure it out later. Jason,
Yeah,
how
I
are
have
you,
it written
dude?
down.
It's been 3 years since we've seen each other.
Holy shit.
I think, right? Because
Yeah.
of the
No,
because the world
Rose
shut
City.
down.
Rose City. Jason was at Rose City last year.
No.
I think I saw Eric.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, listen, it feels like my brain says it's 3 years. I was about to comment on the fact, like, look at, so we're cropped in a way, and the only reason our shoulders are even meeting, at least on my monitor, the reason our shoulders are meeting the edges of the screen is because just the nature of the crop. You don't have that sort of like limitation, and yet your shoulders are so wide. And I saw weights in the background, friend, and it's probably because you're just pushing iron, dude. You are just pushing weight, as much weight off, pulling weight off, as much weight off the ground as possible. You are the pinnacle of health from my perspective.
Stands like Shawn over there.
Holy cow! What have you been up to? What's been going on with you, Matteo? Again, just offline before we started, Matteo goes, guys, can we do this thing where we ask our guests and give our audience a little bit more lead in, understanding who they are, the stuff that they worked on in the past. And it took all of my control to not have my eyes like get stuck as they rolled into the back of my head. But it is coming from a good place. So let's do that. Because he'll listen to this later, by the way. He'll be like, those jokes.
Yeah, and look, Matteo's bummed he couldn't make it. He was very excited about having you on.
Oh,
Yeah. Last minute family emergency happening in the background. We'll crack up about it once I hit the not live button. But it's pretty freaking hilarious.
He's got a baby.
What have you been
so
up
you
to,
can probably
man?
guess.
How's the workload? How's your schedule treating you?
just work and dad. That's pretty
Yeah.
much, and this year, especially leading up to, I have a lot of projects that I'm doing this year that are being set up for next year to really come out, a lot of my own stuff. So this year is a lot of grind. And both my kids are older and they need more attention. And so it's a lot of my day now is trying to find some kind of balance to not just walk out into the ocean.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Dude,
we
I
all
have
have that
spent this
moment of ocean walk. Me, it's heavy traffic,
An issue of a thing that I'm doing, and literally this last page took all day because it was having to work from home. And like I'm doing this Detective Comics run, and so I'm finishing this last thing on Poison Ivy or something. The whole time my 3-year-old is jumping on my thigh, and my 9-year-old is smacking me in the back of the head.
For sure. One of the curses of having a home studio, man. Right? Hey,
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were in a Batman run. Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
congrats.
really freaking awesome.
I didn't know you were doing that either.
Well,
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. It just I don't know if they've announced it. Like,
Okay, so this is us announcing it. We could bleep it out so people don't freaking freak out. But
Well, this won't
congratulations,
come out for
man.
like a month, so as long as they announce it before that. I
If
think we're
Shawn
good.
remembers, like if he presses the edit button or whatever the buttons that he presses in the background. Okay, so can we talk about that very briefly? As far as the trajectory of your career, it is
Yeah,
one of the
this is
key
what I
things
wanna
I
get into.
remember when I first was exposed to your work. It sounds so awful. Like there's a
That was so clinical.
You should be on a watch list. I was exposed to your work. When I first saw your work, right, it had come off with a background in traditional painting, because that's the space that you were in for a while, and then you decided to slum it with comics. Can you talk about that for a little bit? What led you into from traditional painting? There's a huge canvas behind you. I've seen some of your paintings. Like the last thing I remember, I go like, this guy, we shouldn't be hanging out with this guy. He should be someplace else. You had done what felt like a closet door size painting of
Yeah.
Spawn, I think, from like way back in the day.
it's in the office. It's in the other.
And I was like, geez, Louis. We'll get back to that. You just said the other office, and that makes me laugh. You have 2 offices, but let's talk about that really quick. As far as hey, you were doing more traditional, I would guess like more gallery stuff, time work, and then you said, hey, let me try my hand at comics.
It was the opposite. Comics. When I was a teenager, actually, and through high school and junior high, all I wanted to do was be Tom Savini. I just wanted to do
Sure.
special effects and makeup and gore and horror.
Sure.
And then it might have actually been McFarlane's Spider-Man that just, because I loved drawing, and it just kicked me in the ass. And then I got into the serious stuff like The Crow and then real mature stuff. So right out of high school, I was like, holy shit, comics, I can actually do my own horror stuff and tell my own stories and tell my own things and draw my ass off. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with not the splash page element of it. I genuinely fell in love with the pacing, the panels, and the storytelling. And there's always a storyteller inside of me, and I guess the art is the thing that brought it out. And even in my fine art work, there's a narrative quality to a lot of the paintings. I got stuck creatively. I was self-taught, and I got stuck in Tennessee, where I couldn't get any better on the work I was doing. And then I befriended and started talking to George Pratt, a really phenomenal artist and illustrator who lived in North Carolina, online. And he's like, oh shit, you should just come out here. He's like a natural teacher. He was just like, we're all out here. It's me and Kent Williams and Scott Hampton and Tommy Lee Edwards. And I'm like, I'm going to go to North Carolina. And these guys, I'd never moved at that point out of state, let alone just to be around other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was in that time where like Kent Williams had a lot of personal stuff going on with his family and his marriage and stuff. And so he found himself kind of like solo at a time as well. And we just kind of wound up meeting. And long story short, we wound up sharing a studio for about 4 years. And that kind of became like my art school.
Wow.
Just doing comics projects, watching him paint and he was doing the fountain at the time.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I remember that. Okay.
Holy cow. That must have been mind-blowing to be present for the creation of that, right?
That was near the end. So we'd shared a studio with each other for a good couple of years. And so by the time it was the fountain, we were kind of like a fairly well-oiled machine. We were short films together. We got to go to, he pulled me with him to Canada to go watch the filming of some of the fountain for about a week.
Sure.
Which was incredible. But that's where I learned. I learned most of my painting and stuff from him through that time. But it's comics has always been this thing. Like it's obnoxious as much as people say. Like when it bites you, it fucking bites you because
dude.
I'm doing interviews with art magazines and stuff, and still saying these art magazines, yes, but I'll probably draw comics for the rest of my life. Like,
right.
Someone took something from me. One, I would have to at least be able to ink draw. But then two, I was like, I love making stories. I love making comics. And it is interesting. There are comic book artists that exhibit and do fine art. My father on the phone, it was just last week. I know how all this probably sounds, so I'm going to try not to sound too much like an egotistical or whatever. But like, he's reminding me, he's like, not all comic artists have shown at the Smithsonian. Not all comic artists have shown internationally in Berlin and all this other stuff. So he's hyping me up to like push the fact that I might have a different thing. And so, but inevitably it wound up, especially once I introduced a family into my life, fine art and family, it was just too much. So career-wise, inevitably, I told my wife, I was like, I don't know, I'm putting 50% into artwork and 50% into comics. I don't know why I'm not getting more than 50% back. So I had to make a choice because I got tired of fucking hanging out in that middle mediocrity. Like you said, like people still had to be exposed to my work. There was no place they could just find it. And so inevitably then when my daughter was 1, I made the choice to just put the fine art aside for a moment and see what it would be like to dedicate myself 100% to a thing. And since that moment, I think I've produced more work in the last 10 years, in the last 8 years than I have in the previous 12. And the projects I'm doing and the improvements that I'm getting and learning digital and having a blast playing with something new. And it's just now that I'm starting to incorporate a lot of my fine art stuff back into the comics. I'm like, there's a way to balance this. There's always a way to balance, whether it's family and work or work and work. And so now, whether I find like I open up commissions list just to give me like a reason why I have to put pen on paper and to fuck around with stuff. Money is good as well, but like sometimes you need to, I take a few cover gigs here and there or commissions just to make myself, paint.
Sure. That's freaking awesome. It's fascinating to think about it led you the other way. You know what I mean? Like most people who are, most specifically, you keep coming back to it. And I think that's the spirit of that is something that both Shawn and I, less so about Matteo, because he just loves being the idea of himself. You know what I mean? He just loves that, like the bright, glorious sunshine that he thinks that he is. He can't get over it, But Shawn and I really love the idea that regardless of how much, if you think about it, comics, to your point, once it kind of gets its claws into you, unless something really awful happens where you're completely like you divest yourself from it and step away, guys who, especially in our space where we love drawing and we love sequential storytelling, we love like showing narrative through like picture, it never gets out of your system. You know, like,
No.
you know, Shawn just sits there and moans every single annoying day about how comics just peed all over him. And yet here he is. He's like, dude, I want to continue to do a comic-centric podcast. We're going to talk to a bunch of people who love the medium. And he's about to go into his own project, you know, that is 100% his. So he still keeps coming back. You know, every time he goes to the front door of comics, it slaps him and then it kicks him and it tells him, you know, go stand on my porch for 10 days and maybe you can come into the Fight Club. You know what I mean?
I would like to point out that you're the one being negative now, not me. So
no,
you need to be in black and white.
I am in the observational spot of what I see. I am a glorious scent of roses on my end.
Is that what you are?
I love the idea of people taking, understanding what the comics is from a business side, which is always tough when you're in the beginning of your career. You're trying to understand. Because you're so creatively motivated, right? Oh my gosh, you think like, I grew up with X, Y, and Z comics. Wouldn't it be awesome? To your point, you were like, dude, your exposure to, I keep using that word. Like the first thing that you sort of like said, I want to be able to do that is pretty much mainstream related stuff, right?
Well,
and at some point,
you know, we're artists when we want to break into comics. And so everything, and I say that, and there might be people that get a little feisty about it, but like, and I mean artists, not necessarily as a compliment. We don't, when we break in or when we start, we define ourselves. We define ourselves as an artist. We define ourselves with our art. So if someone doesn't like our art, they don't like us. They don't like this thing, our art, we suck.
Right.
So it hurts. It hurts so much, and we're so fucking dedicated. But that's why we're so dedicated, because we're trying to prove ourselves. We're trying to prove our work.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of artists stay there. I see a lot of.
That's a really good observation.
Yeah, we're like, wait, I'm an artist. I'm an illustrator. I'm an artist. It takes a moment. I don't think a lot of people sit back and be like, wait, first I'm a man, then I'm a father, then I'm a husband, and I do art. I make art. If someone doesn't like what I make, they didn't like what I make. You know,
Right.
I've enjoyed my work so much more in the last 5 years because I separated myself from it.
How brilliant is that, dude? How long did it take you to get to that point? How long did it take you to get into that?
7.
Let's talk about that, because you actually hit on a couple of great points there. The one that I was going to go down in the path of, like, when you first break into the industry, you're so creatively motivated and all you want to do is pretty much stay on the creative side of the fence. But there's also this component, and Shawn was hitting on this like a few years ago, where they never teach you the business end of comics, you know, where they go like, you need to start paying attention, not just on how you produce the artwork, right? But also in the capacity and by which not just you're compensated by it, by like how much time that you put into it, because you want to have that partition between like the stuff that you do for your day to day. In your case, it's for your family, but generally just for your overall sort of like, I need to learn that when this doesn't land well with the general public, it's not a strike on me. It's just a strike on that work, on the stuff that I'm doing. And I need to learn to build that muscle to go like, cool, they didn't like that, but it's not an insult, you know?
Right. I saw some hashtag on Twitter the other day that says comics broke me.
Oh boy. Let's talk about that. Let's get into that.
We had a whole episode about this one.
I have to stay off Twitter today because, like, you know, here's our 90s words so the editor can get on there. Like, I just wanted to like, pussy. I'm looking at these things, I'm like, that broke you? I'm like, I've been promised and given so many huge, amazing opportunities that were fucking snatched away at the last.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
3 major times in my career. 3.
Yeah.
Like,
Me too.
It like that hurt. I got it. But the thing was, is like you either go on Twitter and say comics broke me, or you go take a week and you're like, all right, let's not work with that person again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it also makes you stronger. It teaches you a few important lessons. I mean, I agree with you totally.
Like, oh, you don't, okay, no, this isn't happening now. Well, how do I adjust? How do I pivot?
Right. Exactly.
A lot of people just cry, but but you don't. You, at some point, you know, they're like, I'm not going to give up on comics because somebody pulled a story from me. I'm going to do one. It just makes you, what they should understand when things go rough and if things get too shitty, you can do your own.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
how
right.
Freaking amazing is that statement right there, which is like
absolutely
in
right.
This day and age, right? This day and age, especially in this like, sort of like landscape, compared to what? Again, we're gonna go back to like back in our day, you know, like it was so much harder to say a statement like "go ahead and make your own" and actually try it and actually be competitive. But in this day and age, yeah, dude, in this day and age, it's so much easier. There's different challenges, obviously, but it's so much easier just to make the thing to make. There is no barrier to entry. You can make it in whatever capacity it's available to you. Let me go back to what you were saying, because Shawn loves that comics broke me hashtag. I almost think that he came up with it. So I think there's a part of that, you know, when you said, oh my gosh, 3 great opportunities got snatched away from me. It was heartbreaking and blah, blah, blah. I empathize, right? Everybody in this group can empathize and be like, oh, that's really freaking sucks. And I think part of the current geography, like with a tool like Twitter, allows shit like that to happen, which is everybody now there is an avenue for people to get that immediate hit of I am relevant because this bad thing happened to me. And I think that's the guiding principle. That is the true north of hashtags like that, which is show how relevant you are through this level of empathy and sympathy that you're trying to get from people. And that to me, like sometimes it can read like these people are like incredibly soft, blah, blah, blah. But it's like they're given this tool, right? And so they're going to go take advantage. There's a most recent one right now in which people are talking about, name an experience that you had with a professional that had stuck with you, and for the most part, most of it I saw was really positive. There's a young lady by the name of Morgan Beam who said something very, very nice to me, right? Or about me. Said, hey, I've loved Eric's work forever. I was tabling at a show for the very first time. He came to my table and bought a piece of art, and that got me through art school. In the vein of that, right? That's incredibly positive. And yet there's always one person that will go like, I had an experience with a pro and he was such a dick and that stood with me and blah, 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 blah. But it's that same muscle, only with a more, pessimistic twist to it. Yeah. But Twitter at its baseline establishes that for them, And so some of this stuff that reads like ultra, like 2-ply soft, which is a term I love hearing. Like, oh my gosh, that person has 2-ply is so 2-ply soft.
That's a great term. I haven't heard that before. I always
think to myself, like, you know what? Would we have done the same thing if we had Twitter at our disposal way back in the day? If we had access to hashtags, Like, there's plenty of people.
Oh no!
But here's the thing. I think we did it. We just did it to a much smaller audience of our peers. Like it's similar to this room right now. You'd give me a call and be like, "Fucking Eric, Project X just fell through. Damn it fucking hurts." And we'd spend 15 minutes consoling you. Be like, "It's gonna be cool, man. You're gonna be able to do." Like we'd strategize around how to do.
Right.
And that's one thing that I don't hear, which is like people who moan and then go, "But I did better because I like to your point at the end of what you were saying is like, I got over it because I ended up and go and do this, right? People love staying, and this is not the right term, but people love staying in that victimhood space because it gets so it's the same psychological pop that they get when somebody celebrates them. It's like I'm relevant and people are paying attention to me. I'm getting a level of engagement that I would never get, so look at me,
Yeah.
Shawn, I kept interrupting you. The creator of Comics Broke Me hashtag wanted to say something, and what was it that you wanted to bring up, pal?
Well, I wanted to say, And you're right. I mean, I think what you just did was contextualize it all. Because if Twitter was around when we were younger, yeah, we might have done some dumb shit. But that's what cons were for me at least, getting together with your friends and bitching and moaning about how bad shit is going.
Sure.
When I was trying to break in. But I was going to say that it seems to be there's this attitude. I mean, we decided to pursue a career in comics or pursue a career in art. This is like, I want to live my dream. So few people go for it, and out of that, even less make it. It's like trying to be a musician, trying to be an actor. It's not going to be easy. So because you've chosen this more difficult path in life that will ultimately, I believe, be more personally rewarding, life is going to test you and make sure, you earn it, and B, you're deserving of it. So you're going to be placed with challenges, and all those challenges are going to force you to change, adapt, and grow and learn so you can keep moving forward. So this attitude that, like, I was in for a year and people were not nice and things didn't go my way, and it's like, yeah, well, what did you expect? I think your expectations are way off.
Yeah. Comics, like any other creative industry, I mean, you literally want your livelihood to be something you enjoy doing and that you would pretty much do for free. That's not going to be climb. Everybody wants to do that. So it's going to be fight.
Right. And but I also saw in that hashtag a bunch of attitudes where it's like, I didn't get paid shit for this graphic novel I did. And they're mad at the publisher. It's like, well, okay, but you signed that contract, so you accepted it. And B, are they making much money on this at all? I mean, let's be real. Comics don't sell very well. If you're working for a small publisher and you're doing an entire graphic novel and you're like, I got paid $15 a page. Well, if you accepted that, well, then own it. But also, is the publisher making their money back on that?
Right.
Well, here's the thing. I work with a lot of young people, right? And so it's like there's the rhetoric and the language that we're using in here clearly are coming from a bunch of dads. You know what I mean? Like clearly coming from a specific era of guys who then are fathers now, and we talk very, like, everything that you guys are saying, whatever signal you're broadcasting, I'm picking up. But there are times when I'm taken out of the box that we're in, and I go like, oh, that does suck. So and then let me back up what Shawn is saying. I'm not saying what Shawn is saying is off. If you go in there, and they are quote unquote underpaying you. They didn't sneak that on you at the very last second. They didn't say suddenly like, hey, we're going to pay you $75 a page, which is like really, really low. And then you said like, okay, cool. And tomorrow they start paying you $50 a page. Right. You went in there, and it goes back to like the business component of it, right? If you knew that is a bad deal, and you know for sure that the comic book industry is not going to pay you any higher than that because for whatever reason your skill cap is right at $75, you wish that you could make more. You wish that the comic book industry pays a little bit more. You wish that independent publishers paid a little bit more than mainstream publishers. Wish is not a strategy for your fucking finances. Knock it off. Don't do that, right? If you knew going in that you were going to get underpaid and you went for it anyway, shut the fuck up, right? That's on you. Right? If they did something wrong, like there's a couple of them that publishers did not pay them, dude, I would be through the roof. Yes. But I certainly, unless I'm trying to do something with this sort of attention that hashtag is getting, I certainly wouldn't bring it to Twitter. My first phone call is that to the publisher and be like, hey, you did not pay me. My second phone call is to legal counsel to be like, these guys are not paying me. Because that's the only way that these guys actually pay attention if some heat is coming down their necks that's actually sort of like detrimental to their day-to-day operations. Twitter is not it. You know why? Because the first time that somebody did it and caused a quote-unquote movement, which I laugh at, I guffaw at the idea of a Twitter movement, but like especially in comics, but like the first time that somebody did it, awesome. The second and third time, less awesome. These days, it's so overused that like, what do you call it? Institutions just like shrug and be like, oh, right, this isn't as impactful as it once was. They just shrug and move past it. So if you really want to make a difference, and especially in the case of like you're not being paid, go do something about it. They're like, oh, yeah, lawyers are expensive, blah, blah. It sounds like you're just making excuses. There are plenty of avenues for you by way of like legal avenues that are available to you. That's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Go find them and go get your money. All the other ones, I'm just kind of like, you went in there with your eyes wide open. You could have been smarter. And if the understanding is, wait a second, that's really something cued you in that's underpaying you. You didn't have to do that. And if you believe that you can get more money for the work that you're doing elsewhere, why did you stay there? You know, that doesn't make any sense. But again, that's dad talk, you know. Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, I went in, I signed every bad contract when I first started. And that's just happened. And again, like I'm fortunate that we didn't have Twitter, because I definitely filled my ears, my friends' ears with all the complaints. But I mean, again, like but after like a few of them, then I'm like, I'm going to start reading these all the way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know,
no, it smartens you up business wise, right?
Yeah, when I was getting screwed up, right, it was like comics weren't breaking me; they were just pissing me off. If anything, it just kind of all stronger.
Yes, right,
like,
right. The hashtag itself is so dramatic. It broke me. No, it upset you. I mean, there's a difference between being upset and being broken.
Yeah. Again, I contextualize everything in generations that we lived, the access that we had to the kind of silliness that's out there now. Let's go back to your body of work now that we've gotten all the vitriol out of the way, right? Ooh. Where is you talked about this earlier. You were I remember when you first were showing clips of yourself. God, that sounds awful too. When you were showing clips of yourself drawing digitally for the first time, and I'm like, this motherfucker is emulating that he's doing with his traditional brush and pen onto his pages. And if you had told me, dude, these are all digital, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have called you a liar and kicked you out of my house, you know? But you actually found a way. What was that process like? Was it you sort of like, why did you feel like there was the component? And I know the answer for myself, but I kind of want to take your temperature on it. Why did you feel like there needed to be a component that infused it with the traditional work that you were doing?
It's my it's honestly, it's got to be my old man response. I know how, and I like doing art a certain way. The way I do art is mixed media. I love seeing history and tone and stuff. I don't just the printed page and the clean black and that whatever. Like, it's great, but like I love to play with materials and all of that. And so when I grabbed the tablet, first off, I bought a Cintiq probably a year and a half before the iPad, and it gathered dust. It was just this huge stylus on this screen, and I was just like, this is not, there was a distance. There was something with the pencil that Apple had that became so intuitive, it felt like a bit of a sketchbook. But the old man comment is, I know how to make art the way that I like it, and so I wasn't picking up pens and tools that were just neat and cool. I was literally finding things to emulate my tools so I could use them. I wasn't trying to mimic my traditional work. I was literally just trying to find things that inked the way that I needed them to fucking ink.
Right.
So
right.
I have 4 or 5 brushes, with all of things that are available in Procreate and all these other shit. 4 or 5.
Same here.
And I can do everything.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I think
are they brushes you made or brushes you purchased? Or are they stock brushes?
2 were stock. The rest I bought, and I didn't even tweak them. Yeah, when they were like, "Oh, I bet you make all your brushes," I'm like, "That sounds awful."
Yeah.
How do you?
No, it's too much. It's like, I mean, I know where you're coming from exactly, which is at first I thought, oh my gosh, it just opens up all sorts of possibilities by way of effects, design, all the things, the polish, right? And then I get into Procreate, which is probably 95% of my work now, closer to 98% of my work. And all I'm doing is emulating the stuff that I'm doing when I'm doing it traditionally. So again, the idea is, and I agree with you 100%, which is I just like a line to look like the way I want it to look. If it happens to be digital, that's great, but that's the same attitude that I take when I'm drawing traditionally. I want that line to look a certain way. This tool allows me to accomplish that line, so I'm going to use this tool exclusively. Like Shawn, still uses traditional tools, right? And he has a picture in his head of what that line is supposed to do. But by the way, as an aside, between MATTEO and Shawn, right, they are killing so many animals using like this mink brush. So if PETA were ever to come down with their animal rights hammer and slam these bozos across the face with it, I would not be surprised. But thankfully...
Yeah, but you know what? But you know what I'm
go.
going to do? If PETA comes down on me, you know what I'm going to do?
What is it?
I'm going to start a Twitter movement. PETA broke me.
PETA broke? Yeah. PETA break. To be fair, PETA breaks everybody. The point is, like, Shawn and Matteo still work in traditional media, and the stuff that they can pull out from those brushes, the techniques that they're getting, is pretty dang interesting to me because they have never been tempted. I don't think they've ever been tempted to go digital. Shawn, what do you?
I did digital. I did a whole miniseries digitally just to do it, to learn it, to see what I liked about it, and after that, I slowly traditional just crept back in. So I went from fully digital to I'm going to do thumbnails and pencils digitally, print out blue lines and ink it. Then that became I'm going to thumbnail digitally and pencil and ink traditionally. Then I started doing my thumbnails traditionally again and just, I mean, I color digitally for some jobs now just because I think the editorial world has become so used to being like, oh, well, I'd rather that red be blue. Right. And if that's a painting, you're like, what? I can't, like, it's painted, it's done. But in Photoshop, you can just grab it and adjust the hue saturation.
What is that, Shawn? What was the siren song of traditional tools that brought you back away from away from digital? It's
a few things. One, the computer allowed me too much editing abilities to the point where, you know me, and I'm very precision driven. It allowed me to get way too deep down that hole of precision. Yeah. Even like with thumbnails, with composition, I'll be like, that head should be 1 pixel over. And I would just go down this crazy wormhole. But two, there was for me, there was a soulless quality to drawing on glass. Like
you piece
the
of
stylus,
shit.
The stylus isn't touching the drawing, it's touching a screen, which is then telling the software this is the mark to make. So that for me, there was a disconnect there that I really didn't enjoy. I liked the feeling of a toothy paper with graphite and a dry brush, like those sensations I get. Like I can feel the texture of paper through my brush when I ink it, and I rely on that to tell me how to adjust my pressure. But that's just me. I love what you guys are doing with your digital work, and you two are some of the few artists where I can't tell a difference when I see your digital black and white work and your traditional. There's a couple things I can recommend. Number one, you need to upgrade from Windows 95. That's one. Let's just like get away from Windows 95 and get yourself something that actually has any kind of horsepower behind it. And number two, right? Like Paint Bucket is not the right graphics tool to use. You should not. You should get away from that because it takes a little bit out of the experience. You know. Jason, can I go back to something that you had said? You were talking about the tablet. I assume you were talking about the Big Cintiq previous 2 years before the iPad came out, right? Was there an uptick in your attitude or just your overall perspective after the iPad came out, after the Apple Pencil became, that much more upgraded, whatever it is, and you said like, whoa, this is actually a viable tool for me now? Was it Procreate and all the fanciness that is like, Photoshop is a graphics program, but it's everything, right? Yeah. Procreate is made for drawing, you know? So did any of that impact your attitude?
Yeah, I only got the Cintiq because Todd hit me up to draw Spawn. And so my thing when I asked him, I was like, that's great. Can I write it? And he's like, well, sure, you can write the first few issues. And I was like, cool, can I color it? And he's like, okay. And I got off the phone and I told my wife, I was like, I have to buy a Cintiq and learn how to color. Because I was like, I don't know how to color digitally. So I had to buy it. I colored the first couple of issues, and then it collected dust, and I got colorists for the rest of it. But I honestly, there was a few parts, but really, the part of me was like, I don't want to be the old man bitching about paper, because
Shawn,
it's literally not going to be a thing. Like paper and all of that stuff. Yes, there's going to be a niche market, and I still love doing paper, and I still love painting. Like none of that's stopping. But when it comes to my illustration work, I absolutely like speed alone. One, I got scared I was going to get left in the dirt. I want to do concept design. I want it for movies. I want to do storyboards. All of this stuff has become digital. Guy Davis is one of my good friends. I've known him for decades.
Sure.
And he's a traditional guy. And I bump into him at Monster Palooza a couple of years ago, and he's been concept design for Guillermo del Toro for the last few years, and he's a full guy. And same thing. It just looks like his drawings on the thing. And I'm like, okay, I can't get left in the dirt. I'm going to be this one guy still struggling over fucking whiteout and spatter.
Yeah.
And when I finally, and you're right, like Clip Studio is fine. It's a good program. Photoshop is fine, but goddamn, when I found Procreate, it was this intuitive. I could just draw like, oh, here's my size and opacity, and I could just go back, and things were smoother. And so it changed my rules. Like, one, I love the speed because nothing pisses me off more than repenciling.
Yep.
And when I see your time lapses, Eric, like I'm just like, see this is why you go because you're like changing eyes, moving shit over. I'm like this. Right. You don't have to erase anything. Right.
Yeah. And that's why I didn't.
All of my traditional painting has gone for me because I absolutely abhor changes when it comes to painting. Make this hand bigger on a painting, and I'm like, so
exactly.
I'm like, from now on, digital painting, so I can change colors and sizes and make alterations.
Yeah.
So digital just kind of refined that. My ink work and my painting work have become more personal and more, maybe at some point more gallery related. And most of my illustration work is mostly meant to produce. Yeah. And when I mostly meant to produce, it's that the original art isn't a consideration for me. It's I want to make this next year and a half with the projects I have planned. I just want to make a shit ton of comics and a lot of books. And I don't need more and more stacks of fucking conversation pages that no one wants to buy. Whatever.
Sure. Let's go back to something that you said, which I think is interesting, could lead us into some pretty spicy territory. You said, I didn't want to be the old man, and I made fun of Shawn just now. I didn't want to be the old man that just got left behind because technology is moving forward, right? To me, when I first started working in my most recent job, I'd realized that there are these kids in their early 20s, and they are phenomenal with Photoshop. Just the level of concept art that's coming out of the relevant concept art. It wasn't even derivative, which is something all things like ArtStation opens up and suddenly everything is about ArtStation. Everything looks like this incestual style because everybody wants to be relevant in that field. Oh, I see these guys who are working in the mainstream feature film, animation, whatever it is, right? Like they look at that work and they go like, well, I need to start looking like that. So eventually there was a phase in ArtStation where you couldn't identify, or you could tell the root cause. You could definitely tell, patient zero from who they took that style from. And so everything started looking the same. These kids that I was working with, phenomenal, relevant, every single one of them had their own voices, and they all looked to me to give them feedback on that artwork because I was a senior in the space, right? And then I would I would have to print that out and draw on top, and it's like I needed to evolve so quickly, and it was uncomfortable at first because obviously being thrown into the deep end of the pool and not knowing what's the best way I can be sort of like supportive in this space and help them in their career, and obviously in the most practical sense, how do I help them get their art aligned so that it goes through these gates. That was a wake-up call, but then establishing that muscle of like, whoa, this is scary, but I need to learn it because I don't want to be the guy that left behind. It doesn't inherently stay in a space of like fear, which is I don't want to get left behind. It then transforms into, dude, I want to go learn that. I don't know how to do that, but I want to learn it even though it's going to be painful at the very beginning, right? I think there's something to be said about that, especially when in this day and age where we were talking, was it 3 episodes ago, about how like AI has become such a controversial hot button. Like, Marvel just did their most recent show with this AI opening, and the director had openly admitted they didn't know where those images came from. They would just say, "Hey, make these changes," and suddenly a couple minutes later, there it was, these changes. And I go like, yeah, of course you didn't know, because it's early in the process. You know, nobody's talked to you about it. It's not relevant yet, right? But I also think that there is a space in the world, and I'm not advocating for its current version, that if we don't understand how to leverage that tool in the most responsible way possible, and that could be in the most minimal way possible, we are also going to get left behind. What do you guys think of that? Shawn, you've had strong opinions about this.
No, I agree with you 100%. I never, like, I saw so much fear as the initial reaction. And, you know, my first response is like, okay, this is here. So it's not going to go away. It's the door's open. It's here. And then I started seeing, well, there is some really interesting stuff being made with this. And I could see this being a really helpful tool for conceptual stages of development for what we do, but then using that to go draw from, I think could be interesting. Like we use PhotoRef. Like, let's say you're designing a character in like a science fiction that's got medieval flair to it. You're going to go get a bunch of armor and stuff and just start sketching, but this might put shit together in a way you didn't think about, and then you go start sketching. So I don't have a problem with it. I do think there is some real negative sides to it, but like you, I think that's all going to be worked out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What do you think, Jason? You've seen it, right?
I think I think it could be a good tool for the artists, but the problem is the artists aren't using it. It's the corporations that are actually hiring artists.
There it is. Yeah.
Conceptually, you could whatever. As an artist, yes, that hugely beneficial to kind of start working out your piece that way, but you're not the one doing it. The guy in the fucking suit in the desk is saying, you know what? I want a sci-fi story with a medieval flair. We hired these little motherfuckers who want money.
Right.
Just do this generic shit, and then by the time it makes to the film, it'll look personal and whatever. And so guys who have personal visions and concept designs and abilities who are actually having their work stolen, so it can become the AI thing for in the thing. And so you're right. The current version, I may have a bigger problem with it at the moment because of that. It's just too easy. And the problem is the majority of the public doesn't care if it's personal or from another artist. You know, like you know, they don't care that, you know, Eric was sitting there drawing the whole goddamn time. They just want to see a thing. You know, and they won't know or care if it could have been a little better, a little bit more personal, or a little whatever, because they're already seeing something visual that wasn't there before, and they're excited by it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll say that throughout. What was that, Jay?
Needs a lot of work.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I'll say this: like studying art history, technology, as it's advanced in the world of art, as I've studied it when I was in school, I saw that it was the great eradicator of mediocrity. So you have a tool like painting, and you have the printing press, and people need like drawings, black and white drawings for this press for every type of media that's being published. So what happens is you have some excellent artists, but there's more of a need than they can fill. So you have more like a mid-level artist coming in, and that becomes cheaper and more efficient, and they can fill all those holes. So you've got this big like influx of mediocrity in illustration, and along comes the camera, and everyone's freaking out. This is the death of art. This is the death of art. You know, it's going to go away. No, but what it did was it knocked out the mediocrity and allowed the cream to still be the cream. And we're not there now, but I think we will be. And I think right now in comics, we are suffering from an influx of mediocrity. The publishers are putting out some of the most mediocre, uninspired work I've seen as long as I've been alive. So I don't mind seeing some mediocrity knocked out of the way. Yeah. And what that does for the artist is says, okay, it's here. I need to up my game. and those who put the time in and put the work in will rise.
Yeah. I think it's multiple parts. So let me go back to something that Jason was saying, which is, it's when the tool in and of itself, I believe that it's pretty harmless, right? I think it's like, whatever, it's machine learning, it's scraping and taking all sorts of pieces from elsewhere, and it's assembling it in such a way where it's like, dang, that's pretty dang compelling for an AI tool. It's when somebody is starting to take that into a level of commerce, which it's just a human nature when you start dealing with people who are trying to get by with as little as possible, right? Not just from the not just from the corporation / business side, but also from the technical. The guy who can't draw, suddenly he has value, Suddenly he's able to be relevant in a space that back in the day, dude, nobody would look in your direction, but because Midjourney or one of these AI tools gives you that opportunity, suddenly people are looking at you going like, whoa, you really produce something amazing. And the buzz that you get from somebody telling you how awesome you are, because you somewhere deep inside of you, you have to know you're not that awesome at art. You're just really, really good at that tool.
Oh, yeah.
That's like somebody getting really good at like cutting wood and saying like, oh my gosh, the way you built that house was genius. No, you just was really good at cutting wood.
And that's what Adobe did for graphic design 20 years ago. It allowed all the small business owners to not have to pay money to mediocre designers. They would just do it themselves. So
it didn't filter out mediocrity. It just put forth their version of mediocrity.
No, but where I was going was, so I think what happened was the field of graphic design had to up their game, and I've seen some amazing inspired graphic design work over the past decade that's just incredible.
Yeah, well, this goes back to what Jason was talking about earlier, which is like, as an artist, in order to not, so here, and I think this combines both of your guys' points. As an artist, you need to stay relevant, right? But there's also a component where you go like, but in the meantime, we have to wait for all of this mediocrity to suss itself out, because it's pumping out. You want to talk about like ArtStation being sort of the incestuous pool of everything looking the same. Midjourney is the same exact thing. It can't help but be that, right? It is effectively taking images, data, and what do you call it, and concepts, and mashing it all together. And that's like the perfect definition of how to homogenize something. Just take everything from all the different columns and mash them all together to make this thing. You're like, that's cool, but that doesn't really have a voice anymore. I think this goes back to what Jason was saying earlier. Go ahead.
And that. Oh wait. Oh, hold on. My computer just did something. I was going to say that. Shit. My computer just fucked me up, and I had a good thought.
See how easily he's freaking distracted, dude. You are Jason is like this.
Look, I'm on hypersensitive mode because this computer.
His points are so. What do you call it? He is like a locomotive barreling down from one coast to the next, right? You are one of those things from Blazing Saddles. Where one guy stands at the other end and another guy stands at the other end.
But I remembered,
away.
and if you don't let me go, I'm going to lose it again.
All right, go ahead, go.
My first thought when I saw Midjourney was that this is all very homogenized looking. And I never thought for a second that this is going to replace visionary artists. I never thought we're going to have a Mobius that's AI generated. I never thought we were going to have a Jorge a Zafino that's AI generated. So again, I saw the mediocrity as maybe it's a threat there. But to the true visionaries, you can't program a computer. Like, they're using what's been done to create new imagery, but a visionary doesn't use what's been done.
Yeah, that's true. That's also, if we and I want us to be able to talk about this too, in that there's a generation that's already trying really, really hard to be relevant, right? We were of an age when exposure, God, I keep using that word. It, like, seeing the guy who's a fucking badass is, like, to your point, Jason, when you first saw Kent Williams' work, that's undeniable. You saw it and you're like, holy crap, this guy. Same way that I reacted when I saw your work. I'm like, you're slumming it. What are you doing here? Get out. Go be good someplace else, But I think there's a lot of people, to Shawn's point, who are just right at the cusp of being good, but they are right below the border of mediocre. And when a quote unquote threat like Midjourney or AI tools comes along the corner and does it so much faster and so much better than you, you're sitting there, you've got to have a crisis of faith. You've got to have this existential crisis of like, fuck, man, how do I get good in this space? How do I become employable in this space, you know?
I mean, that's where we start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
How do I become good? How do I become employable?
Yeah.
It could, who knows? Like we might be a last generation of making art for stuff. Like, and then, art may just wind up going back, circling back to fine art, like actual stuff on paper that a creator makes, and everything in illustration when it comes to art it might go to computers. Like, it's been slowly heading, that way. Like, I do everything I do for illustration digitally.
Yeah.
And it might, so yeah, I've had to kind of resolve myself on that way too. I was just like, what if these guys just say, hey, I want to make an indie zone comic, and I'm just going to say, here's my prompts and here's my comic. Because a lot of, when the AI first started coming out, what was really upsetting was I saw non-artists, corporate people, and even some writers being like, yay, now all the artists don't have power anymore. I'm like, what power did we have?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What amazingness did we, they're like, oh, now we don't have to pay all these fucking artists. I'm like, you weren't really paying us to begin with. But like,
Right, exactly. And I find that, for me, that was liberating, because it was like, I'm going to figure out how to make my own money anyway. So
yeah,
that was good.
Yeah.
But I did comment on one Midjourney thing where someone did something in Midjourney, and they were calling themselves an artist, and everyone was going along with it. And I was like, so I posted this. I was like, calling yourself an artist is like someone calling themselves an economist because they use a calculator. Mm-hmm. Like, you're really missing a lot. Don't confuse it.
I want to go back to something that Jason just said now, which is like, what does the future look like now that they've kind of let the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, right? And I think this is, for me, and this comes from a place of, I've had my jobs, right? Like, I have history behind me. There are, as far as potential clients are concerned, there are people who will still look to me instead of these AI options. Maybe that window is closing. Maybe those clients are dwindling. But for sure, there's a level of confidence and comfort that I can go like, whatever, I'll just go do this. And I feel like it's the same with both of you, where you're like, I've been doing my thing for a while. I know how to leverage. I know how to push the buttons that I know how to push. I know the levers that I need to pull on in order to find a level of fulfillment in my life and still fulfill my in financial responsibilities. But there's a whole generation who don't have an understanding of what that is, because they've been going along using everyone else's playbook. That's why Twitter is so relevant for comic book artists. That's why DeviantArt at one point was so relevant for like these illustrators who do a specific way, and in ArtStation that looked this like. The thing that I encourage a generation now that's coming up against this, like, or getting to the edge of this massive precipice that seems like it's just a drop off to the abyss, is like, build the future that you want for yourself. Understand the rule book, understand the space that you're in, understand all the tools that's at your disposal, and then ultimately go like, because the future is uncertain, right? Go build it for yourself, right? And right. Be one of the first few people in that space that suddenly said, actually, I started painting on canvases again, but instead of doing X, as the rule book told me has done so historically, I actually went Y, and that's how I was first in that space. Maybe you won't be the most successful, but certainly you'll find your version of fulfillment. I think that, again, going back to an earlier part of our conversation, Twitter is a cesspool of people who love to complain.
Yeah,
right. But rare is it ever that somebody presents an answer, and when somebody does, they're vilified for it.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And that's the part that kills me, is that, that muscle to flex and to go into that sort of like negative, pessimistic space is so easy, right? But when somebody goes, actually, here's a potential solution, I don't want to poo-poo that guy. I want to have it. If I don't agree with it, I'll debate with them, but I never want to put it down. I want to say, like, actually, I know how to leverage that. You're missing this component, but potentially I know how to leverage that. And I think Twitter is not made for that shit, right? Like, Twitter is just made to complain. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah.
loud party. It's the bar. So if you say something loud, everybody's going to hear you and they're going to comment to you, and everybody's drinking and everybody's riled up. But like,
For sure.
I mean, my Instagram life is so positive and so art filled. I'm just like, art. I'm going to talk about art.
Me too.
Money
Me too.
Art. I want all this other shit. When I get on Twitter, like, fuck the governor of Texas. What the fuck? You know?
Yeah.
So like I do it, 100% use the vitriol of Twitter to go complain politically. And in my thing, I'm like, if you want to see art and not all the bitching, go to this. You know?
I think
That's fair.
you know, going one level above that is just like, if that's the thing that you want to see is art, there's also a way to curate any and all of it so that your experience can be as close to center as what you want. It's when, you know, it's when I see the action, like, you know, I'll use an example in as far as the creator-owned space. And somebody was coming up with solutions potentially of how to understand where you are in that creator-owned comic book publishing space and knowing what tools are available to you, right? Yeah. And at the end of it all, I think the bottom line is something that we've captured in this conversation, which is like, no matter which way you go, it's going to be fucking hard, you know?
It is.
No doubt.
Something special and fun for a living. It's going to be fucking hard to be able to do it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
establishing a barometer of success. What is successful to you without having to use somebody else's sort of level, that's valuable to understand, like, aspirationally, I want to get there one day. But here's where I am, so let me make sure I know what's successful for me. I think that's where people get kind of tripped up, you know, because they go, unless I launch a campaign and it makes 6 figures, then this thing sucks. Where it's like, no, actually, you launching a campaign and believing that you had a product that was ready, that's pretty freaking good, because 75-80% of people get stuck at that space of like, I don't think this is good enough, man. I'm never gonna put this out. You actually went out there, stuck your neck out, and said, let me make people aware that I'm actually doing this thing, you know?
Let me ask you guys, as coming up in the age that we did, was it more? Did it take longer to understand, like, when it comes to success, when you say, like, find your own, you know, version of success? When I started in comics, that's when the Image guys were still Marvel guys, and then they were breaking over to Image. So I saw it as, not only can I draw comics and do everything that I love for a living, but I'm going to get fucking rich.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys,
same here.
Individuals, they're making millions off.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so, you know, those of us in our, you know, 40s and 50s, like, we, you know, that's what happens. You break into comics, you get fucking rich. I've meeting Jay floating at me and all this other shit. I'm like, yes. And then, you know, everything fell apart as it did.
Oh yeah.
I foolishly was waiting for it to come back until it really explained to me that was a niche that happened, and that is, this is what the comic industry is going to be. We're down to 6 figures, not 7 figures when it comes to sales, things like that. It took me a while to resolve that I wasn't going to, just based on comic book pay, be Todd McFarlane.
Sure.
It took me a minute. Oh, wait, I have to find, I came up in comics with this entirely different dream. What am I supposed to do with this reality?
Yeah. No, I'm the same exact story.
Oh, wait, this isn't going to be that way.
Yeah.
I remember going to my first San Diego Comic-Con, and, like, I had just finished my undergrad. And I was like, I'm going to go get a job. I'll be a millionaire by the end of the summer. No doubt.
I was like, and the thing is like, once you adjust and see, you know, again, you either say comics broke me or you pivot, you know, like,
Right.
Then you find other ways, you know, to find that success and to make your own way and all of that. And, and as far as the going way back before the AI thing, when it came to going digital and all of that, I have to say, it was initially a fear, like you said, of being left behind. But then inevitably it became like, I've drawn comics for 23 years. And finally, someone showed me a new way to draw comics. And so I went from, I need to learn this, to, holy shit, I get to finish full painted covers in Starbucks. I'm drawing full pages on the road. I'm on the airplane. And not only was it the convenience and mobile, but it was just a new device. Like when you got pen and ink, you can only just get better. Like,
right.
You know,
right.
but finding something new to play with as it changed everything from me being very anti-digital and kind of scared of things to just seeing like, oh, it's a whole other tool that I've never learned. And I just have a blast learning and playing with it.
If there's something like, if I can just kind of like zoom out of the 20,000 foot level of our conversation, it seems to me like there's a theme happening, which is just like either being like the word that comes to mind is pivot, right? Whether it be artistically or like, you know, psychologically. And not only that, having the, and I don't know what this is, maybe I'm misrepresenting a generation of hashtag comics broke me, right? But like, there is a generation represented in this room where we go like, that sucks. I didn't become a millionaire by the end of the summer. I didn't become Todd McFarlane, but I need to now pivot. I need to have an understanding. Those tools are that avenue is no longer available to me, but I still want to do this. The millions is amazing. You know, I would love to have that in my life, but I still want to do this. So how do I pivot? And in the majority of our cases, except for Shawn, because he's like, I want to feel the texture of the paper, blah, blah, blah. But like, we were like, hey, we want to be able to draw comics faster, right? So let's go find a way to go do that.
Look, my point was digital didn't make me faster. It made me slower because I could go deeper into
I was slower initially as well.
You didn't give it enough time to mature, Shawn. There's
all right, I'll try it again, Eric.
All right.
I'm going to get an iPad and I'll try Procreate because I haven't tried that.
We're gonna keep trying, Jason. That's our hour. We don't want to take you away from the genius that is your drafting table, pal. Thank you so much for making time. We're gonna do what we can with the footage. Thank you for your time, Shawn. Always amazing to hang out with you. We're gonna keep on trying, Eeyore. And we miss Matteo. I hope everything on his end turns out okay.
Do we miss Matteo?
I do. Shawn does not have that relationship, so he's excused. You, on the other hand, you're the guy that calls him your brother, and yet you're sitting here implying that you don't really miss him. So you guys have stuff to work out in the background. I'm going to hit the stop button now.
I push him away before he can hurt me. I'm feeling rejected today because he's not here.
That's a whole different episode, yo. Okay, I'm going to hit the stop.
This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.